So welcome to West Virginia, everyone. How are you all doing today? Excellent. Well, we're glad to have you with us. My name is Katie Gallagher, and I work in the Parent Relations Office here at West Virginia University. Today, I'm going to be co-presenting with Sabrina Cave. She's the Executive Director of the Mountaineer Parents Club at WVU, and also with Dr. Melanie Cook. And Dr. Cook works in our Office of Student Conduct here at WVU. So we're glad you all joined us. Don't cheer too loudly for the last session of the day. We know that it has been a long one, and we know there's been a lot of information, but hopefully this session will help you to kind of synthesize a lot of that information and kind of know when to expect a lot of those pieces coming to you. As you can see behind us here, this is class. So we are going to start our class the same as all of the other classes start, and that is with a review of the syllabus. So if you can pull up your syllabus. And then also we gave you your textbook earlier today. And on page 32 is your notebook. There's a page of notes for you to take your last minute notes. Sum all of those up. We gave you a pen on the way in, and on the side of your desk, if you haven't found it yet, is your desktop. You can go ahead and pull that up and get situated and ready for class. And as you can see, this class runs how long? And then you all groan, probably the same as your students will groan. I can assure you that we are a well-oiled machine. This is one of our last days of orientation here today, and we definitely will have you out of here in plenty of time to get back to your students in advance, especially if you're a good class, and bear with us as we go through this. So with that being said, we will go over a review of that syllabus. So pull that out with me. You can see this is the way that all of our classes start at WVU. And we think it's important to share this with families and parents as they come onto our campus as well. Some of you, it may have been a while since you've been in a college classroom. Some of you may not have been in a college classroom. The college classroom has changed a lot, but something that has not changed on our campus is that all classes start off with that review of the syllabus. And with that, you can see the instructor's names. So you have contact information from day one for your students. And it's really important that your students realize that, because as you can see with this class size, it is a little bit larger. Your students may have larger lecture classes and may not feel comfortable raising their hand, asking questions during class, or they may have another class immediately following and they can't come down and see the faculty member one-on-one. So with that being said, those office hours underneath there are also very important. All of our faculty members are required to have office hours. These are times when they will be in their office available to your students to answer questions one-on-one. Maybe they didn't understand something in class, maybe it was a test that they had difficulty in a certain section. So we encourage your students to utilize those office hours. It's really important and valuable to them. You can also see that class schedule. This is something else that's a big change from high school. It's spelled out. For your students, it'll be a 16-week class schedule for their fall and spring semesters. So they're expected to plan ahead, to look ahead. They're going to have their reading assignments from November in August when they come onto our campus and get that syllabus. For your purpose today, what we're going to do is we're going to do an overview of this next upcoming semester for your students, starting off in June and July, the last few days of June, and heading through into August as we talk about engaging on campus, and then on through to the December period where we talk about that WVU experience that your students will hopefully be having. You can see the breakdown of grades are also on there under class schedule. This is something else that your students should pay attention to. It's important that on day one, the students know what that breakdown of grades is going to be. So if you call them in October and say, how are you doing in the class? It should never come as a surprise. They should be able to track that progress of their courses and how they're doing based upon that information. And always be able to know where they are and how they're doing in that class is very important as well. The last piece I get a lot of questions from parents on, and that is about attendance, because oftentimes you're the ones who are thinking maybe they've got a brother's wedding or a sister's wedding that they've got to come home to and they may need to miss a class, or maybe they get sick and call you and you think, what's that attendance policy? I answer the parent helpline here at WVU and get a lot of questions from parents in that regard, and what I always say is your student needs to refer to their individual syllabus, and that's because WVU has no overarching attendance policy. Catches some people a little off guard, but when you think about it, we have some classes that meet once a week, we have some that meet 5 times a week. So you can see how those attendance policies might be very different. So it's put on the syllabus day one. Students need to pay attention to that, and they also need to make sure that they're aware of the fact that if there are absences built in, that they use those judiciously as they go through. Just as you all may have today had to take a day from work to come, this is your student's job for the next 4 years. They need to use those judiciously as well. If they get sick, they may need one of those absences. So a hot sunny day in Morgantown, probably not a good reason to take the day off from class and just to use up one of those absences as they go through. So with that, we will go ahead and launch into Chapter 1. We talk about empowerment during this period because this is the time when oftentimes a lot of those batons start to get handed off from parent to student. And to start that off, I want to kind of get a feel for the class. This is kind of like a support group, if you will, for you all. So just a raise of hands as I ask these questions. How many of you are the ATM parents? Who are still handing out the 5s, the 10s, and the 20s on the way out the door? Okay, a lot of ATM offenders today. How about the alarm clock parents? Who's shaking them awake? Hands high. These are bad ones. Yes, we've got a mom and a dad. It takes 2 in this family, I'm seeing. And these are perhaps the worst. The pink shirt kid parents. Who's doing the laundry still? Bad. Okay, we're going to have a pink campus this fall if we don't start tying up some of those loose ends now. We kind of joke about it and chuckle about it, but realistically, as we start talking about those pieces to kind of tie up those loose ends, you all know your students best. And guess who is not coming to campus with your students this fall? That's right. Me, right, Mom? Exactly, and we know that. But these are things that your students, among others, are going to have to start doing on their own and learning to do on their own. And so your mindset as parents during these next 2 months, we challenge you for your homework assignment to start thinking about what are those other things that your students need to start doing on their own. I had a father call me a couple of years ago and said, I gave my son $200 and it's gone. I mean, how much should realistically he need? But he said we didn't have the budgeting conversation before he came. So have those conversations this summer while your students are there with you and you can talk through those things. Another piece that we mention along those lines is accommodations. This is something that we mention because this is the time to take care of it. If your student has had an IEP, maybe a learning or a physical disability that they've dealt with over the past years, those IEPs do not automatically translate over to the college campus. We do have an Office of Disability Services here on our campus. Immediately following the session, we will be having them at our information fair in the Mountaineer. Please make a note to stop by and see their table. The others I challenge you to do that for, or perhaps if your student maybe has not been diagnosed with a learning disability but has always had challenges in certain areas. As we mentioned, the classroom size changes a little bit, so does the teaching style. In college, you get a lot of talking heads. Faculty members come to the front, present their lecture, they leave, students are expected to read. Reading comprehension is very important. And it's not so much that homework assignment piece. So maybe your student struggled in math, or maybe it has been a reading comprehension issue. If you're worried about that, stop by the table as well and talk to the folks in the Office of Disability Services, because there may be testing that can get done this summer so that your student comes on campus with accommodations in place and ready to be successful. At week 8 is when we oftentimes see undiagnosed learning disabilities coming to the forefront. Anybody know what week 8 is? Mid-semesters, that's right, midterms. And often the phone calls go home to mom and dad, and the questions come back to me and say, you know, they're struggling, what do they need to do? And then you've got to start that testing process. So again, those things to think about this summer kind of tie up those loose ends. We also mentioned FERPA. I know you heard a bit about this earlier, but this is that Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And as you're doing that transition, this is one that's often a big change for parents, because when your students come to our campus in August, their student records become their student records. Many of you have had access to Edline or other online services where you've been able to monitor their progress, how they're doing in high school. That kind of stops when they come to college. And we mention this to you because, again, when their student records become their student records, we hear from parents sometimes, yes, but I help to pay those bills, right? And we realize that piece. And there are some things in place that your students can help to share those student records with you. But this is something else to have that conversation about this summer. As you can see, the bills will come due in July for the fall semester, and then again in November for the spring semester, but they are posted to the student's STAR account. So in order for that to get taken care of, if you are helping with that piece of it, we do have a brand new piece that's coming online this summer. It's going to go live July 1. Here on our campus, and please make a note to encourage your students. We'll be reminding students of this through their Mix email account and also parents about it, but this is the Parent Guest Portal. Your students can go online and grant you access to their student records. So this is something that they need to take the initiative to do. This will allow you to be able to pay bills and perhaps see some of their other student records, financial aid, student transcript kind of information, grade information. So make sure that you have those conversations as your students go through. Also with FERPA, this does cover the majority of our student service offices. So there are a few additional offices that might not be covered under this main waiver. There is obviously the Office of Student Conduct. They'll have their own FERPA form, and residential education is another main one that you may bump into if your students are living on campus in the residence halls. So keep in mind that there might be a few additional ones coming down the pipeline, but this will take care of the majority of those student offices that you may have to inquire through. This is perhaps another one of those pieces, too, as your students make that transition. You all, I'm sure, are well aware that your students are advising and scheduling their classes right now without you. And we know that oftentimes I see the nervous smiles in the crowd from several of you. We know that this is a change again, but this is kind of step one on that journey as your students start that progress and that process of stepping out on their own and finding their adult wings. It's important that they learn this process on their own. A few things just to let you know. I know you heard a bit from your advisors, the advisors this morning, but what your students are doing today is something that they won't do again, but they're learning the process for several pieces. Number one, they are advising with their advisors, but number two, they are scheduling their classes. From here forward, they will not advise and schedule on the same day. They'll have a separate academic advising appointment where they'll go in and meet one-on-one with the academic advisor, and then typically in November for the fall semester, scheduling for spring classes is when your students will actually log on and register for their classes online. But they're learning both of those processes today, so they'll have that all down pat hopefully by the time they come back. You see that 8:30 classes, and I see the alarm clock parents' eyes are getting big and going, oh, I hope not, because I'm not going to be there to shake them, right? We know that that may be something that your students are dealing with and challenged with this first semester as they come onto our campus. But again, as we talk about the college process, this is kind of that job, career placement, career preparing process. And many of us start work at 8:30 in the morning. So we challenge students as they come out and may have those concerns about that. What time do they realistically start high school right now? Shout out at me. 8 o'clock, 7:30s. So they realistically are going to get to sleep in a little bit, right? And they can just roll down the hill, pull on the sweatpants, get into Clark Hall for that 8:30 class. We do kind of tongue-in-cheek say that, but it is important that they get there, that they are there every day. Otherwise, they will be taking that 8:30 class in the spring semester again. So remind them of the importance of going through that. And the faster they progress again, students register in the order of their seniority. So seniors, juniors, sophomores, freshmen. So basically, as they move up, they're going to see less and less of those. So it's important, again, to make that full academic progress as they go through the process. As your students are scheduling and registering for classes today, please encourage them if they come to you and they have questions about their schedule, the importance of them taking the lead on this. I remember when I was a student going through, I came out, had questions, I said, I don't know what HUM 101 is, and I don't know why I'm taking it. And who did I say it to? My mom, of course, because that's who I'm comfortable with. One of the best things she did to me was to turn me around and say, why would you take a course that you don't know what it is or why it's on your schedule? Go back in and ask the question. She didn't take the schedule and go back in and ask the question, but she encouraged me to do it. And it was a very good and powerful first step for me that I remember still all these years later. So please encourage your students to do the same. They may have questions and they may come to you because they're comfortable, but it's important that they start off on the right foot with this process and that they take the lead on that. So as they have those questions, encourage them to finalize those schedules today. Today's their day. We do this every day in the month of June, so those advisors are oftentimes a little difficult to get in touch with. So make sure that they do ask the questions that they have. We also hesitate to let you go back and start making those schedule changes. Perhaps an older brother went here or an older sister. We had that happen a couple of years ago where a brother advised a younger brother to drop a class. You don't need that. The student did need the class, and it screwed up a sequence of courses that he needed, added a semester onto what he needed to do because he couldn't get back into the course. So really important that you realize kind of the implications as your students go through. There's a lot of resources, though. You can see the online catalogs, the checklists, academic websites, a lot of information for your students available online and for you as parents. This is their job. No one would start a job without kind of doing some homework ahead of time, learning a little bit about it. So it's important that they engage in that and start to learn about what's going on. So those online catalogs have course descriptions. Have them log on and see what those courses are going to be about. If your students do have any questions to as they go through this process, make sure that they know that we have the Seamless Transition Program. This starts off in the month of July and actually is a process for them to start off a bit ahead of time. Maybe they are worried about kind of getting off on the right foot as they start off here at the university. This is an opportunity for them to come back in advance of that fall semester and start off in maybe some smaller classes. Maybe they're a little bit behind of where they wanted to start, and they have the opportunity to kind of start off a little bit in advance. If they do that now, maybe take a Math 126, and then Math 155 can follow in the fall and get them back on track. So as they go through, realize that there are, again, these resources available to them. This is another snapshot of one of those resources. This is DegreeWorks. Very new on our campus. This past year it came on board, and we're still really enjoying all that it brings to the students. But you can see it's actually an interactive checklist. So as your students go through, they need to be logging on and checking this out. If they're bringing an AP credit or college credit from another institution, that should follow on to this schedule. And as they go through that process as well, it's important that they realize that if something isn't showing, that's something they need to ask their academic advisor about. What do they need to do to make sure that that gets onto that transcript in the right spot? So as they start off on this journey, to make sure that they do get off on the right foot, please encourage them to use all of those resources at hand.
So chapter 2, getting off on the right foot. Your student's physical environment will change just as your environment will change as well at home. There will be one less person there, one less person at the table, I always like to say. And certainly those residence halls will be a big change for your students. I'm sure you've all planned and marked the date. You know that move-in day is August 17th, and we do like to say you need to move your students in on August 17th and... Oh, you guys better say that word again with me. I'm getting a little concerned, okay? So we want you to move your students in and... Okay, now you guys laugh about that. But we had a father call Katie once and said, "Help me, my wife has made hotel reservations from Friday to Tuesday." That's a little too long, folks, okay? And I always like to call it the Last Supper. You know what I'm talking about? You have to take your kids out to dinner one last time, right? Well, just think if they're sitting with you in a restaurant, they're missing that wonderful opportunity to be making those new friends that they're going to be living with in those residence halls. And you can see that we have a full weekend of activities for your students that they are required to attend. The first is Saturday, August 18th. That first year academy. Students will be meeting in their academic departments and will also visit the libraries. Again, starting that process of getting them off on the right foot. And also the new student welcome is on Sunday, August 19th. All of our first year students will be together in the Coliseum for their first official welcome. So again, those are required activities for them that weekend. And certainly classrooms. Probably your students were not used to a room this size when they were in high school. That will be a change in their physical environment that they will be adjusting to. And also student organizations. Know that we have over 350 student organizations on our campus, and we encourage our students to be involved outside of the classroom. So it's important for them to try something new. Perhaps they were always involved in, let's say, athletics in high school. This is their opportunity to truly branch out. And also, WVU. Know that we have a comprehensive one-stop shop for our students' health and mental and physical needs, And it's important because oftentimes parents, you're more concerned about this than your students are. I always like to remind parents, sort of as part of that homework, to have the discussions with your students this summer. Do they have an insurance card? Have they ever used it before? Do they know what a copay is? Again, these are all things that you've been taking care of for them. Also know that we have wonderful psychologists available on our campus to meet confidentially with your students. That's also an important resource. Maybe your student is having some trouble adjusting. Maybe they're having some roommate issues. Maybe they're homesick and they certainly didn't think that would happen. Know that these resources are certainly available to them. And also studying abroad. Don't be surprised if your student tells you that they want to study abroad for a week, a semester, a summer. We encourage this. We want our students to have that global experience. And our Morgantown community. It's important, parents, for you to remember that your children aren't just students here at West Virginia University, but they are young adults of our Morgantown community now. And Dr. Cook will speak a little bit more about that. Also, that electronic environment. You all know that your students are more tuned in than ever before. And another resource that's available to them is our virtual orientation. Make a note of that, parents, in your notes section. I encourage you to have your students log on to this virtual orientation this summer. There are lots of important modules and information that they can actually do before they get to campus so that they're more acclimated once they get here. The other thing, too, about them being constantly connected, I always like to ask this question. We've been in here for, 25 minutes or so, and be honest, how many of you have already received a text from your student? Tell me the truth. See? And I always laugh and say, what are they going to do without you this fall, right? But it is kind of funny because we've also been doing this long enough that I know what they probably said. Where are you? I'm done, right? They're shaking your head yes, because we do laugh about it, because your students are in constant communication with you. And this lady in the back just probably got one as well, right? Mm-hmm. And we do laugh because think about when you left home for the first time, maybe to go to college, maybe just off for a job. How often did you call home? Maybe once a week. We know that your students now are in constant communication. Just think, now they can text you, call you, email, tweet, Facebook, IM. I mean, the list goes on. And so because that they are in constant communication with you, we know that it's valuable for us to share resources with you so that when they do contact you, and you know they will, that you can point them in the right direction. So I encourage you to join the Mountaineer Parents Club. It's a wonderful way, again, for you to learn more about the resources that are available to you. You can do that today by filling out the bottom of your syllabus and leaving that with us. So make sure that you do that. The Mountaineer Parents Club is not PTO, so those days are well behind you, unless you have other children at home. But they do get together and meet locally. Sometimes they invite a WVU speaker to come to your area to speak on a certain hot topic, and another event that they have are summer send-offs. So definitely look for that schedule. These are casual, fun, picnic-type parties, if you will, where we invite all WVU students and their families. It's a wonderful opportunity, parents, for you to meet other families of WVU students and for your students to meet other students that they're going to be seeing here this fall. And also Fall Family Weekends. Circle that date in your calendar, October 5th through the 7th. I always tell students that if they forget to invite their parents back to campus, I've just taken care of that for them. So make sure that you mark that date in your calendar. It really is a great weekend on campus, and honestly, your students will want you to be here. It's the cool time for parents to be on campus with their students, and your students will want to show off their new home, their new environment to you. They'll want to tell you about the new friends that they've made, the classes that they're in, perhaps the student organizations that they've joined. So make sure that you mark your calendar. I'm also excited to tell you that weekend, the Blue Man Group is going to be performing at our College of Creative Arts. So if you've heard of them, you know they're really cool. If you haven't, you might want to check them out. But that schedule will be available later this summer for you to see. And also another resource, parents, in your environment is our Parents Club newsletter and the helpline. Make sure when you receive the newsletter, you read it. That's why we send it. It has important information, not what time the football game starts or shop at the bookstore, but pertinent information for you to support your student. New things that are happening on campus. Sometimes parents will call and they will say, what about this? And I'll say, you know what? We did a great feature about that in one of our newsletters. And they'll say, oh, I haven't read it yet. So make sure that you read it, okay? Valuable information. And also that helpline. That is a resource for you parents because, again, as your students have questions or problems or concerns, this is the number to call so that you can help them and point them in the right direction. And again, your electronic environment. That parent e-newsletter is Parent Electronic News, and we send bi-monthly email notices to you with important information. So make sure that those are nice, neat email addresses on that sign-up so that you can receive that valuable information. And also WVU Today. If you ever want to know what's happening on our campus, parents, make sure that you go to the WVU website. You can always see what's happening. And certainly our Facebook page. If you're not on Facebook, you might want to think about it. And certainly, if you are on Facebook, I encourage you to like the Mountaineer Parents Club page for more information. And as you can see from this map, that truly we are a coast-to-coast network of WVU families. Also, if you don't see a dot on your state, don't get concerned. We're always looking for parent volunteers, and I can tell you that after these 3 weeks of orientation, we've heard from a lot of families that are certainly interested in taking on that role. So now actually I'd like to share with you just a brief video so that you can see what other folks are saying about campus and about the Mountaineer Parents Club.
It was certainly difficult to drop her off in front of Bennett Tower on the first day. Thankfully, it was really busy, and we didn't have a lot of time at the curb, but she had confidence, and we have confidence in her, but it was pretty emotional for me.
I really recall when we brought our second son to WVU. He was our baby, and I remember we dropped him off, and we were driving home, and of course it was very emotional for my wife leaving her baby here, and I may have had a tear or two in my eye as well.
It's a day when families are going through sort of a difficult point. This is the point you've got to say goodbye to your son or daughter.
Right after we left her on the curb, I looked over and Ray had a tear trickling down his eye. I had a smile on my face. I was so happy for her. She's going away to college. She's doing that, great thing and that milestone in her life. And he was the one that had the tear. His little girl was leaving home.
I understand as a father. I mean, I remember how I wanted to, sort of coddle both the boys as they went through. But you have to back off, because they've got to learn how to do it themselves.
Advice I have for parents would be to relax. Just one word. Relax when they drop you off. Relax if your classes aren't going as well as they want them to. If you're having a bad day, everything to me was just take it each day as it comes, because it's all going to be new. I wouldn't go away to college if I've done it before, so relax.
When she came home, that first semester was finished, there was a change in Kate. There was a maturity about her that we'd never seen before, and it was kind of neat to see in Kate that development and growth that she got from that very first semester.
Students are our #1 priority, and we really are student-centered, and we focus on helping our students make that transition.
As parents, we tend to worry when our children are in crisis or have a problem, going back to those early days where we could kiss it better, fix the problem, and we have to give them the survival skills they need in order to be able to become effective adults. A parent needs to remain involved and in touch, but not in touch too often.
One of the things that we encourage students to do is ask for help if they need it. Sometimes they get so busy and so involved that they forget that we have a lot of people here poised to help them.
Join the Parents Club and actually participate.
Part of the beauty of the Parents Club is that parents become part of the WVU family. Parents get to interact with one another and their students. They learn who their students' friends are through all these sorts of interactions.
We really feel like the other events are for the parents. The students are in school. Let's get the parents together, share what's going on.
I always get a great feeling whenever we head west out of Maryland, and crossed into that West Virginia border and really are happy to be part of the WVU family.
We view education in a very holistic way, and so we consider everything we do as affording a teachable moment in the lives of a thinker of tomorrow.
My advice to parents is trust your child, but trust that West Virginia is going to take good care of them.
And I always like to say that we don't share that video to make you cry, but sometimes we do have a few tears. And I can tell you that over these next couple of months, it will truly be an emotional roller coaster for many of you. There will be days that you will look at your child and you will probably say, I can't wait for you to go to Morgantown, West Virginia, right? Maybe some of you said it today. You never know. But we also know that there will be other days that you will look at them and it will be hard for you to believe that your son or daughter is heading off to college. So remember that we're all in this together. And certainly Chapter 3 is the most important reason why your students are here at West Virginia University. And I do like to share with you the academic protocol because it does change from high school. Again, thinking about how your students are transitioning, there's not a principal's office anymore. So know that if your students have an academic matter or issue while they are here, they need to speak with their faculty members first. After those faculty members know that we have department chairs, above our department chairs, we have deans of each of our 13 schools and colleges, and then above our deans know that we have a provost office. Provost Michelle Wheatley, who you saw in the video, is our highest academic officer. So again, it's just a little bit of a change for your students, and that's why I like to share it with you. And the importance of going through college, not just to college. Again, what is the sticking factor? What's going to make your students successful while they're here at West Virginia University? And the first thing that I can tell you, parents, is your students need to go to class. If your students don't go to class, they will not be successful. But not only do they need to go to class, they need to be prepared for class. Have they read the reading assignment that was due prior to that class? And I can also tell you, parents, that faculty members don't like it when students sleep. And some of you look a little sleepy right now. And they don't like it when students text or read the newspaper. So students need to be actively engaged in those classes. And again, that will help them be successful because it is a lot different from high school. And it's important for your students, as they are remembering that this is their job, to study regularly. And this is a transition for a lot of our students because think about it. Some of you said that their class day now in high school, or if they've just recently graduated, started at about 8, 7:45 maybe. Their whole day is spelled out for them, right? From the minute until they're done. It's not like that in college. After this class today, you will meet with your student and they will have their class schedule in hand, and they might say to you, I have an 8:30 class and an 11:30 class. What am I supposed to do during that time? And you are going to say to them, study regularly. And we do sort of laugh about this, but there's a lot of free time, right? So what are they going to do during that free time? Time management is important, and certainly the libraries are a wonderful place to study. They need to find a place to study, and if it's not the libraries, maybe it is the residence hall, but they need to find a place. Something else that they can do during that time is visit our learning centers. I like to remind parents, and you please remind your students, to visit the learning centers early and often. The night before their final exam, when they're trying to cram in about 3 or 4 or more chapters, probably a little bit too late. Parents know that we pay students who have excelled in these classes to tutor your students for free. So students need to take advantage of these services. And maybe they're not really struggling in a class, but maybe they want an A instead of a B. Maybe they want a B instead of a C. So encourage your students to go to these learning centers. One of the most depressing facts that we will hear sometimes is when a tutor is in a classroom and no one comes to see them. So encourage your students to use these resources. And also that syllabus. It is the binding contract between your students and those faculty members. We have amazing faculty members here that love what they do and love what they teach. And they want to meet your students. So encourage your students to meet them. That's why they provide office hours, their email addresses, their phone numbers. And maybe they aren't comfortable asking a question in front of the whole group. Have them go to their office during those office hours. Just think when your student does that, perhaps that faculty member might say to them, I'm working on an exciting research project. I need 5 students to help. Are you interested? What a wonderful opportunity for your student that they might not have otherwise gotten unless they took that first step. So encourage your students to meet their faculty member. Also remind your students' parents how exciting it is for them that they come to each college class as a clean slate. How exciting. Wouldn't some of you like to start over or have a redo some days? I can tell you that I would some days. But faculty members have a list of names. That's it. They know nothing about your student. So maybe your student was the smartest kid in the whole county. They don't know that. Maybe your student is the one that had the older brother or sister that maybe got into a little bit of trouble and that label followed them through school. Faculty members don't know that either. So it's a wonderful opportunity for your students to start as a clean slate. And I can tell you that if they use all of those resources that are available to them, they will be successful here at WVU. So like all good faculty members, now it is time for your pop quiz, and you have to shout out these answers or we won't let you leave, okay? So, when is WVU move-in day? A. And what do you do after you move them in? Oh, you've gotten better. Good, good. So true or false, DegreeWorks is a tool to help your students plan and track their academic progress toward graduation. True, very good. True or false, the Mountaineer Parents Club is free to join. And I like to say you don't often hear that word in the college process, so please take advantage. If students have concerns about any academic matters, they should speak with the following person first. Faculty members. Very good. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Melanie Cook, who has a valuable message to share with you from our Office of Student Conduct.
Hi, everybody. What do you think of those photographs up there? They're not from our school, trust me. How many people out here from are alums of WVU? Yay. Put your hands up high. Hitting you up again for some cash, huh? How many people from the state of West Virginia in here? How about Maryland, state of Maryland? New Jersey? A few. How about Virginia? New York? Ohio? Pennsylvania? That's my home state. Anybody in here from Pittsburgh? Can you tell I'm from there? Do I say the downtown right? Yeah, how about that? Any other states I didn't name? Where? Oh, we had another Mainer this week. Wow, you're far. California. Delaware. Oh, I didn't say that today. So, yeah. Yes, sir. Guam. See, I didn't get to the country. Wow. And out of the U.S. Are you an alum, sir? No. Too bad. Anybody else? Connecticut? Massachusetts? Any other states? Texas. Oh, the Big 12. We're so scared. Anyway, our office, by virtue of its name, we do meet with students to talk about behavior. And we know that as parents, you've instilled some important values in your children so that when they come to school, they come here knowing that they're expected to be responsible citizens, not just of the university, but the university community. Unfortunately, you may have had this experience as a parent. Sometimes students will affiliate with others that may not be in their best interest. Have you ever had that experience? They may have dated somebody that you weren't too fond of. Anybody out there ever experienced that? Or had brought home friends that you kind of like, I'm not sure I really like this person? Well, or have you ever said as a parent, I can't believe my son or daughter did that? Well, I've had conversations with parents who've said that to me. These photographs actually symbolize some really raucous hooliganism of sort from other college campuses. As you can see, those colors are not our colors, right? So, what we want to do is engage you in helping us deal with what we believe is a pretty serious problem in our community. But first, I want you to know as parents that every time a student receives any sort of citation on or off our campus, our office meets with them to talk about the behavior. So as an example, if a student receives a citation from the Morgantown Police Department or the Morgantown Fire Department or the University Police, we're going to have a conversation with those individuals. And everything we do and every discussion we have, it's educational in nature. And yes, students will receive some minor sanctions if it's a minor offense. Now, I want you to know that none of the West Virginia University students are ever cited for anything like an underage consumption, right? Right? That never happens. But we do have a student conduct code like any other college or university. And this is a listing of rights and responsibilities for our students. And while we know it's probably not the most exciting text out there, and it's not number one on the bestseller list, it is important for you to read as well as for your children to read, because we will expect students to comply with what is really basic right and wrong, stuff that they have learned all their lives. This is the Mountaineer Creed, and unfortunately some students will do some things that are not in their best interest and are probably egregious violations of the code and go before the Student Conduct Board. And usually when those things happen, we quote this creed because what has happened is a student may have in fact been involved in something like this. How many people again from West Virginia? There's a fair amount of you. What have you heard that West Virginia University students do? They burn couches. Now, who would drag their furniture out of their house and set it on fire? How smart is that, right? For those of you who have not heard that, I'm grateful. We're all grateful. But we have had a problem with students igniting things in our community. This photograph is from a street called Grant Avenue. What you don't see is there's thousands of young adults that are running because the wires on top of the telephone pole are starting to melt and fall down. But for whatever reason, this culture has begun in our Morgantown community to the extent that we've had students that are expelled from school because they've been involved in things like this. So as a parent, we ask you to partner with us to have the conversation with your children that they need not participate in this kind of activity because serious consequences can occur. In fact, earlier this week, a student was expelled from West Virginia University for being involved in a fire. So any help you can give us is much appreciated into dealing with this behavior in particular. And I'll turn it back over to Katie.
So with that being said, everyone wave at Melanie and hope that this is the last time that you all see her, okay? We do think that it is an important message, especially as we talk about those adult decision-making opportunities and expectations that your students come to our campus with. Many of you, especially those of you who are alums, realize that oftentimes it's a culture. It's something that students come in with some expectation that they have, that mob mentality of everyone else is doing it, so they just kind of follow. It's really important that your students that you have those conversations with them about the fact that they remember those morals and they keep those as they come back to our campus. The other piece of that is oftentimes, too, substance abuse enters in, and sometimes students are not in their right frame of mind as they are making some of these decisions that will have big impacts on the rest of their life. And we realize that as well. Please make a note to remind your students, Alcohol EDU. This is an online session that your students will be required to complete before they come back to our campus. It will come out July 18th for your students. Please also make a note next to it for yourselves to take part in that. There is a parent portion of this that you can log on and do as well. Had a parent call me a couple years ago and said, thank you for having that. My daughter's fine, no problems. But she has a roommate who's dealing with a substance abuse issue. And it was great for me to have the resources to be able to have that conversation with her. So really very important and very valuable that you realize that, again, there are resources available to not only your students, but to you as well. And we feel this is a valuable conversation to make sure that you're having with your students. Academically, we realize, too, there are a lot of adult decisions that are going to be made, and oftentimes it's around that October, November time period. We reach out to your students in classes where we know that we have, because we track this information, high D, F, and W rates, Ds, Fs, and Ws, withdrawals, where students come in and they may have challenges. And what we've done is we've stepped out to those faculty members and said, we need information back on how those courses are going early in the course. So if students aren't tracking well, maybe it's an attendance issue. Maybe it's that they're coming to class, but they're sleeping during class. Maybe it's that they're coming to class and just not catching the information. They bombed that first test. Faculty members let us know that, and at week 4, we reach out to the students with a red flag and say, something's not going well. You need to change that behavior. Here are some resources, and we're going to reach out to them during that point. We do it again at week 8, that mid-semester mark that we talked about earlier. Ds and Fs are noted to students at that point in time. We say no news is good news at the mid-semester mark. So if they don't receive anything, they're doing well, they're on track and going to be successful, hopefully. But if they do receive information and they don't know where to go, please make a note, October 8th, Mid-Semester Help Center. Very important tool for parents to share with their students, because often you heard Vice President Gray mention, students just don't reach out for the help. There's help out there, but that's as helpful as leading a horse to water and you can't make them drink. There's a lot out there for your students. This is one place where they can stop and see all of those offices. We had parents who would call in and say, my student may be struggling, but they're worried about if they drop a class, how does that affect the scholarship? Maybe they're worried about that undiagnosed learning disability coming back up. They need to drop a class, need to talk to an advisor. If a student's struggling, they're not going to see 3 or 4 offices on their own. So what we do is we bring them together on October 8th at that Mid-Semester Help Center where they are, at the lair, and then we're going to be at the rec center in the evenings. So it's a one-stop shop for them if they have concerns and questions. And it's in advance of that October 26th date. Maybe they do need to drop a class. Maybe they're thinking about changing their major. I was an advisor for 4 years on campus. I had a student come to me at that mid-semester mark and she said, I don't know what I was thinking. I hate chemistry and I hate math, and I'm in a major that requires chemistry and math. And so we talked about options, and at that mid-semester mark, we started looking at what we needed to do. In between semesters, she switched majors, went into psychology, and was extremely successful. 3.8 GPA, graduated in 4 years. So again, she made that adult decision to reach out and get the help. Very important for your students to realize as they start into that semester. For you all, that proactive versus reactive also, want to mention that in your handbook today, you all have the dates and times that the residence halls close. You can see those listed. Thanksgiving break is the first of these. We do close the residence halls and lock them during these times. So students can leave their stuff. They don't need to move out completely. But it is important to realize that whatever they need to take with them, because we close them down and then open them back up at the end of those weeks. Thanksgiving break and spring break week long, and then we're off for about 3 to 4 weeks at that winter break period. You all may be planning that transportation, so just so you know in advance, we do have the Mountaineer Parents Club that charters buses during that point when the residence halls close, and so those will be available to areas where we have a lot of students coming to us from. It is not door-to-door service, and we apologize for that, but we can probably cut a couple of hours off your trip and drop them at a central location, so keep your eyes out for that information coming out in September. We also have a number of other modes of transportation, and since you all, again, are oftentimes the ones looking at that, just want to mention a few changes. Megabus is something new this year for us. This goes to and from D.C. area daily from Morgantown, so that is available. The gray line is actually our bus line that goes back and forth to the Pittsburgh airport and also the Pittsburgh bus station. Again, a daily trip. Zip cars you heard a little bit about earlier, but I like to mention those for carpooling as well. We've had roommates who have gotten really savvy with these. These are available for 18 years and age and older to rent as college students on our campus. So your students can rent these, and roommates have found that maybe you're coming from Delaware area back to campus. It's a long trip, but they can meet you in the middle and then the roommate drive the zip car back to campus. So something to keep in mind. Zim ride, car sharing opportunities, and also we do have a Morgantown airport that flies United several times daily through Dulles Airport in DC. So again, know that those are available to you. Now, how many of you, this is your first student leaving home? A lot of first-timers today, great. How many of you, and watch the wild wave of these hands, are empty nesters after this one? Woohoo! You've got some plans for the rooms, don't you? Yes. They're coming back, okay? At least one of those breaks, probably not the sunny spring break time, but they will probably be coming back to you. And one of the conversations that they will probably be having during that Thanksgiving break is going to be talking about where they are going to live on campus or off campus next fall. It happens very early on our campus, and often, like I said, this is that Thanksgiving time conversation. So we want to mention it to you and give you some resources so you have those in your pocket, because when students come to you, they may have said, oh, I just signed a lease with my 3 new best friends who I've known for 9 weeks, and I have no grades for the first semester yet. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. We really do hope that you can hold off on those signing of leases until the spring semester. And students can also live on campus after their freshman year. It's a limited number of upperclassmen rooms that are available, but that process takes place that first portion of January. And you can also see that we have the off-campus housing fair that follows that same time frame. In the ballrooms in the Mountaineer where you were today, we're going to have an off-campus housing fair with landlords from across the state. If you're coming to us from areas such as Guam, we had a gentleman from LA the other day. Our rental market is probably a little different than your rental market. You may not know the West Virginia laws and resources available. So we do have folks available from our Student Legal Services Office. These are attorneys for free, and you never hear those words in the same sentence. So encourage your students to use them. About 90% of what they do from November until about March is lease reviews. And they do know those West Virginia laws and can help your students to understand what they're signing before they get into that legally binding contract. So do realize, again, that those resources are available. And as your students start off that journey, looking at that student in June right now with all of this ahead, kind of scratching their head thinking, what is that journey going to look like? We know that the conversations, as Sabrina said, are going to come home to you. And as they do, we hope that you enjoy the process of hearing how that WVU journey starts to unfold. Many of you who are alums with us today know how fun that can be, and we hope your students do also find ways to engage in this WVU experience. I like to say it's kind of like a cruise ship, colleges. You pay for it in advance, and then you have a ton of opportunities, and nobody sits in a cruise ship and looks out that porthole window. So encourage them to get out, find what it is that they want to engage in, and what that WVU journey is going to be for them. As we wrap up here today, a couple of points to remind you of. We do have the Parents Club joining process. If you can tear off the bottoms of those syllabus for us, we'll collect those, and also your evaluations after class here today. Also, the information session, we did mention that information fair that's going to be following the session. We get questions from parents. Maybe you heard about financial aid or the Office of Student Accounts or housing questions. All of those folks, including a number of others, student organization folks from across campus, will be at that information fair. Stop by and get your questions answered today. It's your chance to have those one-on-one questions answered. Also, tours. If you've not taken a tour of our campus, we have several leaving from the information desk starting at 2:33 and 3:30 today. Your students oftentimes will want to go around on that tour, even if you've been on a tour before, because they'll have, again, that schedule in hand. So they can go and see where their classes are, and you can kind of walk through that schedule with them. Also, you get an opportunity to view a residence hall room this afternoon as well. If you've not had the opportunity to do so, please feel free to take advantage of that. That importance of finalizing the schedules we mentioned, again, just a quick reminder. And also, this session will be available online in July, so feel free, if you do want to share this with either your students or perhaps another family member, feel free to do that. I leave you with this quote, and this is actually a Mark Twain quote. We do know that, but we attribute it to Jerry West. He is one of our famed alums. Some of you may be familiar with him. He is a famed NBA All-Star and also is the NBA what? Anyone know? Logo, there you go. Very good. He is the NBA logo, but he was also a WVU father of a student. And I want to share this with you as we kind of sum this up, because as we talk about your students going to college and through college, actually, this is the other end, guys. These are the expectations that you set for your students. So as we look ahead a little bit towards that destination, graduation, I want to share his thoughts from his son Johnny's graduation ceremony.
I was born and raised in West Virginia. I came from the small town of Shillian, about 14 miles south of Charleston. I was a shy one of the 6 children. The brother closest to my age was almost 10 years older than me. What kept me going was a rich fantasy built around my dreams and aspirations, and the one thing I had fallen in love with, and that was basketball.
I had Jerry's poster hanging up in my bedroom when I was a high school player. He was my idol. He's still my idol. I think the most important thing, though, I can say about Jerry is that Jerry cares. Certainly cares about this university, cares about this state.
I'm thrilled to be here. Obviously, my son graduating is it's a great honor that he graduated from the school that I went to.
I think it's just something that'll be really special and an experience that we can share together. It's not something that happens a lot, so just sharing it with him will be a lot of fun.
Graduated magna cum laude, Jonathan Joseph West.
To my wonderful son Johnny, who's graduating here today, remember, life is too hard to be lived alone. Find time for your family. You only get one, and I'm sure, Johnny, you say, thank God. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do by the ones that you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, explore, dream, discover, and don't be afraid to fail.
So today, as your students begin that journey of sailing away from the safe harbor, we do hope that they enjoy and explore and dream and discover on this WVU journey. Thank you all for joining us here today, and have a safe trip home. Thank you.